Yes, we are back yet again on the Hoplite channel. I am your host, Hop. Merry Christmas, everyone. And you are here to see the conclusion to Sun Tzu, Art of War, Part 3. Bet you thought I was going to be closer towards the board like the first two videos. Warfare is the Tao of deception, and I just deceived you. I was far away, right? Or was I near? Turns out you didn't know until the video clicked over. I bet you didn't even see this. I would have buttered your bread and you would have been none the wiser. Okay, enough playing around. Welcome back, everybody. This is the conclusion part to Sun Tzu's Art of War, as you can tell. This is debuting on Christmas Eve, so I hope everyone is enjoying the last couple hours until Christmas Day itself. I know I will be. So yeah, we will wrap part 3 up here, and you can get on with your festivities as they were. So for part 3, I'm going to discuss the legacy of Sun Tzu's Art of War. We'll take some final readings with a discussion, and that'll be it. Okay, so let's look at the legacy of Sun Tzu's Art of War after his death and after Japan had been broken up into different kingdoms, and as different emperors came and went throughout the ages. What other legacy did Sun Tzu's work have on the world? Well, we see in Japan, not too far away during the Sengoku period, there was a daimyo by the name of Takeda Shingen, and he would have lived between 1467 and 1568 AD. And Shingen was a fan of Sun Tzu and his tactics. And he adopted the Forenkazan, which translates to wind, forest, fire, and mountain. And if you remember from part 2, I covered this passage actually itself. And that was Sun Tzu instructing his reader that if you're going to be a general with an effective army, they need to adopt these forms. They need to move swiftly and quietly like the wind. But when they're still, they need to be quiet like the forest. When they rage and plunder, they need to burn through villages like a fire. And when they come up against opposition, they need to be as immovable as a mountain. Shingen adopted this tactic for his clan, and because of it, he won many victories, and he was very famous among the nobility in the Sengoku period for this style of warfare. Even though perhaps Sun Tzu's tactics, if you take them in total, were not considered in keeping with Bushido 100%, nevertheless Shingen was very famous for using the tactics and winning as a result. Moving forward, much forward in the future, in Vietnam we see there was a general by the name of Vo Nguyen Giap, and he used the tactics of Sun Tzu in his war with France in Indochina War, and then later against the U.S. in the U.S.-Vietnam War. And yeah, his implementation of Sun Tzu's tactics through the Viet Cong enabled a very, very dug-in and determined resistance using guerrilla warfare that the Viet Cong was able to use effectively against France and then later the U.S., because as we know, both of those wars didn't really go very well for the two larger powers that came into Indochina. And then moving across the pond, the USA, as I said in part 1, the U.S. Army at West Point has the Art of War on its officers' reading list, and the U.S. Marine Corps also has the Art of War as recommended reading, and I believe it's on the Commandant's list. So both the Army and the Marine Corps have the Art of War as a recurring recommended book on the reading lists for their cadets and intel officers. But outside of the military, I'm sorry, I should continue on. Both generals, Douglas MacArthur and Colin Powell, were also fans of Sun Tzu. And even MacArthur, as a Supreme Allied Commander in World War II, said that he always kept a copy of Art of War on his desk. But outside of the military, Bill Belichick, believe it or not, yep, stone-faced Bill, the head coach of the New England Patriots, although not having the best year this year, he said that he was a fan of Sun Tzu and his strategies. And I believe him because maybe deflating a football or perhaps stealing your opponent's play calling from the sidelines or from above would be in keeping with Sun Tzu's tactics, although not quite in line with NFL rules and protocol. Nevertheless, Bill Belichick saw a means to win, and he capitalized on it. And perhaps there's a U.S. president or two who has also read Sun Tzu's Art of War and is a fan. Maybe there's a president who also wrote a book and titled it similarly to Sun Tzu's work. Maybe there's a president out there who believes in those strategies and tactics and is using them right now. Who knows? Only time will tell. Also, I should mention this. It's Christmas Eve, and thinking back in U.S. history, who else may have taken some crib notes from Sun Tzu and used his strategies to win the American War of Independence? You could say it's possible that General George Washington, by crossing that icy, I believe it was the Delaware River in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve, and then getting the jump on the Hessian soldiers in the morning, used the tactics of Sun Tzu to move his troops under cover of darkness and on a very holy day like Christmas, launch an attack. Because who would dare move their army across an icy river in the middle of the night? And number two, who's going to attack us on Christmas? Well, the Hessian soldiers found out General George Washington was that kind of man, and he won that victory, and it was considered a turning point in the American War of Independence. So for Christmas Eve, I think we should all look back on that day and say that, yeah, the spirit of Sun Tzu was definitely working its magic as far as the U.S. War for Independence went. And finally, this has to be addressed too because it comes up. Was Sun Tzu a real person? Now, the historical record as far as the art of war is concerned is very well documented. But the historical record as far as Sun Tzu is concerned is not as well documented. In fact, there is very little known about the man and his life at all. But again, this was 2,500, 2,600 years ago. How well did they really keep records? It's like, well, you would think somebody like Sun Tzu, being a general and being this well regarded that his work, his military treatise, would survive into our time, there'd be more known about him, but there really isn't. So it's led some people to say, was he even a real person, or was Sun Tzu this phantom that was created in those days when in China when it was written, and it was a collection of works by military strategists and thinkers, and they just attributed it to this one man, Sun Tzu, who in fact was made up. I like to believe he's a real guy, because why would all of these military strategists and generals and great thinkers not want to take credit for this work? Why would they create some ghost like Sun Tzu, some pen name, and not want their name etched in history the way Sun Tzu's has been etched? Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem feasible, but there is this speculation out there that Sun Tzu is just the name that was given as the author of the Art of War, and we really don't know who wrote it or if it was a collection of authors that compiled their works together. Anyway, so let's get to some of the readings. And before you ask, yes, this is a paperclip, because when I was putting on my hoodie, and this is my favorite hoodie, the zipper broke. But I wasn't not going to take my favorite hoodie into battle. So I improvised, I adapted, and I overcame. And that's what Sun Tzu would have told me to do. All right, let's get to the final readings of Art of War right here. And yep, as I said in the first part, this translation by Sawyer is probably the best one in my opinion, although there are many good ones out there. And you can get this book online right now, I want to say for under 20 bucks. And if you've got 20 bucks in your pocket, it should be spent on this if you don't have this already. Just going to say that. If you don't have this in your library is not complete. Get Art of War. And there are a lot of readings that I'm taking out of this book, but there are a lot that are left in that I'm not disclosing to you because I don't want to deprive you of the joy of having, getting to read this yourself and absorbing the knowledge contained therein. Okay, but let's take some readings now that I have earmarked, and we'll discuss, as we always do. We jump to chapter 9, page 210. Sun Tzu said, "Thus, if you command them with the civil and unify them through the martial, this is what is referred to as being certain to take them. If orders are consistently implemented to instruct the people, then the people will submit. If orders are not consistently implemented to instruct the people, then the people will not submit. One whose orders are consistently carried out has established a mutual relationship with the people." Okay, so this is a great lesson, and I think it applies to all walks of life when it comes to, if it comes to military, if it comes to management, if it comes to leadership in general. The people want to know that their leadership is competent and they are ambitious, in the sense that they know what they're doing and they're setting out to do it. So when they give you orders or instructions come out, they want those orders and instructions to make sense, and they want them to be consistent so that they keep that trust, they keep that faith in their leadership. For example, and this is just an example, I'm just picking this out of the air. If you tell somebody, well, we have to wear a mask when we go out because it'll be better for everybody if we all wear masks, and we have to wear the masks because there isn't a vaccine, and people trust you. But then later, you roll out a vaccine, and people say, great, we have the vaccine, no more mask. And then you say, oh, no, you still have to wear the mask. People will start to distrust you because that's inconsistent. Why would I have to wear a mask and get a vaccine? Why isn't it one or the other? And if you have no good explanation, people aren't going to follow you for very long. Just a random example. Okay, we'll move on to chapter 10. And this is on page 214. Sun Tzu said, "If the Tao of warfare indicates certain victory, even though the ruler has instructed that combat should be avoided, if you must engage in battle, it is permissible. If the Tao of warfare indicates you will not be victorious, even though the ruler instructs you to engage in battle, not fighting is permissible. Thus a general who does not advance to seek fame, nor fail to retreat to avoid being charged with the capital offense of retreating, but seeks only to preserve the people and gain advantage for the ruler, is the state's treasure." Okay, now this goes back to the story of King of Wu and his concubine army, right? When I said that the King of Wu set up this exercise that he thought was going to be funny, and he was going to see if Sun Tzu could issue orders to a harem of concubines and get them to do what he wanted done. And when he executed the two concubines who were his officers because they couldn't follow the orders, Wu freaked out and he wanted to intervene and stop. And what Sun Tzu told him was that you gave me the order to make sure that this harem would follow my orders. I have done that. It doesn't matter that you didn't agree with the methods. I still got your objective completed. So don't set me in motion and give me a mission if halfway through you all of a sudden don't want that mission completed. Once the order is given, consider it done. But he's also saying here that if you seek to achieve the mission and are ordered to retreat, but understand that not retreating will achieve the objective, well, then it's permissible for you not to retreat. Similarly, if the emperor wants you to fight, but you know retreating at this moment will enable you to win at a later date, it's permissible to retreat. So what he's saying is you should disobey the ruler if you know that victory is achievable by doing the opposite. But by the same token, you would tell him, hey, wait a minute, what if your officers disobey you, knowing that if they disobey your order, they can achieve victory at a later date? He would say, well, no, hold on a second. That's not permissible, right? I'm the general, you're the officer, I give you the orders, you follow the orders, and you are not permitted to deviate. Yeah, but the ruler is above you, and he's telling you what to do, and you're deviating. Yeah, it's different though, I'm the general. Consistency, right? This is where Sun Tzu gets a little bit inconsistent. The ruler gives the order, the general carries the order out, but the general is allowed to disobey further orders if they conflict with his battle plan. If the general gives orders to the officers and the officers disobey, right, because they know better, well, that's impermissible. Seems like he's kind of cherry picking here. He seems pretty arrogant for this guy to say something like that, but he's talking from a position where the general is the king on the battlefield. But it still sounds like no matter what, the general is the king behind the king. Anyway, feel free to debate that one. All right, and continuing on, page 215, below that paragraph. When the general regards his troops as young children, they will advance into the deepest valleys with him. When he regards a troop as his beloved children, they will be willing to die with him. If they are well treated but cannot be employed, if they are loved but cannot be commanded, or when in chaos they cannot be governed, they may be compared to arrogant children and cannot be used. Okay, so it sounds like he's trying to speak from a position of benevolence where, well, the soldiers are my children, and if I love them and care for them, well, then I can rely upon them because they will be as faithful to me as well-loved and well-behaved children. But if they're well-loved and cared for, but they still can't get the job done and they're still disobedient, they're useless. So it sounds as though he wants to approach this position as a general the way a father would approach his household, and that he must be strict, but he must be fair. He must be loving, but he must also be a disciplinarian. And his children do not have the luxury of questioning orders or thinking for themselves, because while they are in his household, while they are in his army, he is in command and they are his charge. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of military figures feel this way, and perhaps that's for the best, because if they do take upon this fatherly role, well, then they will look upon the loss of their soldiers the same way a father would look upon the loss of a son or daughter. Okay. Moving to page 222. This is chapter 11. Sun Tzu said, "It is essential for a general to be tranquil and obscure, upright and self-disciplined, and able to stupefy the eyes and ears of the officers and troops, keeping them ignorant. He alters his management of affairs and changes his strategies to keep other people from recognizing them. He shifts his position and traverses indirect routes to keep other people from being able to anticipate him." Okay. As I said in the opening there, when I snuck up on you with a butter knife, the first chapter of Art of War told the reader, warfare is the Tao, or the way of deception. And he is reiterating that point here, where he is saying, as a general, you have to be self-disciplined, you have to be tranquil and obscure and upright, and you have to be able to stupefy the eyes of both your officers and troops, and you keep them ignorant. But you also do this to keep your enemy ignorant as well. So you are always an enigma. You are a wild card to both friend and foe alike. And by this, you are able to move your plans into place and drop them on your enemy without anyone being the wiser. And this is perhaps a little bit paranoid, because you could say the general is behaving in this manner because he possibly distrusts his troops. He possibly distrusts his officers. And if he lets his officers know the plans and these officers end up betraying his trust, well, then they could betray the whole army to the enemy. Similar to another famous figure in American history, Benedict Arnold, who betrayed the colonists to the British Empire and turned coat. And I'm sure General Washington, like Sun Tzu would have said, believed after the fact that perhaps keeping Benedict Arnold out of the loop, it would have been to the benefit of all the troops in the Continental Army. Of course, they didn't know Arnold was going to be a traitor until he actually decided to turn coat. And I think he may have been a West Point grad too. Think about that. Okay, let's move on to the last reading. This is on the ending page of chapter 12, page 228. And Sun Tzu said, Now, if someone is victorious in battle and succeeds in attack but does not exploit the achievement, it is disastrous, and his fate should be termed wasteful and tarrying. Thus it is said, the wise general ponders it, the good general cultivates it. If it is not advantageous, do not move. If objectives cannot be attained, do not employ the army. Unless endangered, do not engage in warfare. The ruler cannot mobilize the army out of personal anger. The general cannot engage in battle because of personal frustration. Anger can revert to happiness, annoyance can revert to joy, but a vanquished state cannot be revived, the dead cannot be brought back to life. Thus the enlightened ruler is cautious about it, the good general respectful of it. This is the Tao for bringing security to the state and preserving the army intact. Okay, that's a good one to end on, right? So he says the good general is one who cultivates victory in battle, while the wise general merely ponders it. So the good general does not ever let a victory go to waste. He always takes a battle that has gone his way and amplifies that success into further achievement. Because by not doing so, he is wasting a day, he is wasting an opportunity, and if those opportunities come and go with enough frequency, he will run out of them and he will lose. And lastly, he advises the reader to be cautious in warfare because it should always be considered a last resort. And even in Sun Tzu's time, this was no different. He says, do not attack in warfare unless you're endangered. The ruler shouldn't mobilize due to personal anger, and the general cannot engage because of frustration. Anger can always be turned to happiness, annoyance to joy, but a vanquished state cannot be revived once it has been destroyed. And this is true. Emotions come and go, right? And as I covered in the Stoicism series, your emotions are your natural state as a human being. As your animal state, this is your natural state in being a human animal. But being a man, being a thinking man, your reason, your logic, this is what separates you from the other beasts of the world. And you should know that your emotions can sway from one to the other. Hate can become love, annoyance becomes joy, etc. But if you act upon these emotions and do not consider reasoning out what you're doing and why you are doing it, your state could be destroyed as a consequence. And unlike your emotions, if the state is destroyed and the people are laid to waste, there is no coming back from that. So you cannot let your frustrations get in the way or your ruler's personal anger determine how war is supposed to be waged or if it's supposed to be waged at all. Okay, so I tried to keep this one the shortest of the three parts. Yeah, it's Christmas Eve, so I hope everyone, as I said in the opening, is having a Merry Christmas. I might do a Christmas episode if I can get it done in time. Yeah, I think the topic will be germane for the day. But in any event, I do hope you've enjoyed this three-part series on Sun Tzu and his timeless art of war. I enjoyed making it. So if you enjoyed the series, or if you're liking the channel, and if you want to see more videos like this, give it a thumbs up. Could always use more subscribers. I could always use subscribers, right? As my Christmas present from you, if you would like to subscribe, I would be very appreciative. In any event, be well, take care, and yeah, maybe we'll see you on Christmas Day, or at the very least, just after the New Year. Till then, and as always, take it easy.